So I looked at 3 case studies. The first one was at a place called Camp Ben Vinay, which was in northern Thailand, around the Chiang Mai area, kind of just on the border with Laos. Unfortunately, the maps behind me are not of Southeast Asia. But at this camp was a refugee camp for the Hmong people, who are people from the mountainous areas of Laos, who were displaced during the all that crazy shit that went down around the Vietnam War time, which we refer to as the Vietnam War, but was really affected like every country in that area in a very different ways. They all went through incredibly turbulent times. Um, so the Hmong people were mostly displaced. They ended up in Thailand in this camp. The camp now is quite notorious for really bad hygiene and sanitation practices for many different reasons, which I might touch on later. But one man by the name of Dwight Conquergood, who I refer to a lot in my paper, was enlisted to come and help out by leading a sanitation education kind of program. And he has a background in popular theater practices, so that's what a lot of his work was informed by. So first case study, Thailand. Second was in Serbia. There's a man, what's his name? I don't know how to pronounce it. Shkinina was an aid worker who came in to help in a bunch of refugee. I guess they're called collective centers. So not specifically camps, but communities of refugees. Also not official refugees, but internally displaced persons, IDPs, who had come from Kosovo, and it's what was called a humanitarian war. So a lot of the conflict actually came from there's obviously a lot of conflict to begin with, but in some ways it got escalated by like UN forces coming in and creating all kinds of like weird divides and dynamics in the country. Anyway, so that's the second one. So they established a series of creative programs for different generational groups in these collective centers to kind of really try to reestablish the community feels and the bonds and the roles within those communities. Because one of the things that Skinina discovered was that these people had been devastated to such an extent that there was really no sense of like individual rights or expression or anything, and as well as like a complete lack of sense of community. Everything had just been like kind of really wiped out, destroyed. So that was his goal: affirmation of like identity by expressing it. So that was what was going on in Serbia. And the third example comes from Palestine, at a refugee camp called Ada Refugee Camp, where there is a center that's been established for youth, for children, as a creative center to help them deal with the traumas of war and focus their energies in creative, productive ways. And one thing that's come out of this refugee center is a theater troupe called Al Road theater troupe that has put on many productions at this point. The one that I talk about in my paper is called We Are the Children of the Camp, which was their first really like successful production. They actually were able to tour it internationally, and something we'll see is that the camp, the focus for a lot of the Palestinian theater work was not so much focused internally on the Palestinian community in the camp, but more on expressing the realities of that life to an international audience and trying to like get more knowledge and raise awareness of the situation and ultimately find help and influences from outside that could ameliorate the situation for them in some way. So there's a lot of like outward focused energy in Palestine. So a couple of the similarities that I found through these projects, some strategies that worked really, really well. One theme was that all 3 of these groups were able to like focus their efforts in generational pockets. So, for example, in Camp Ban Vinay in Thailand, Conquer Good really focused on getting the children involved and appealing all of his work to younger generations to be interesting to them. And his whole performing troupe that he enlisted was everybody was under 20 years old, and he really found some of the most talented people under that. And his whole theory was that if it's something that will involve the children, automatically the parents will be interested, and they'll get the information through the children. And in his case, he was really trying to spread information mostly about like simple sanitation practices, such as like putting all your garbage in one place and washing your hands regularly, and like defecating or getting all the sewage like in one place and getting systems set up for this kind of thing. So intergenerational focus. I can't go over everything in detail because I don't have that much time. Another strategy. All three of them found that sorry, I'm blanking. That personal relationships were key in all the practices. This is like a theme that's come up again and again through community arts work and through studying popular theater, is that investing the time in personal relationships with the communities and really finding out what people's stories are and what they need makes all the difference to how effective the project actually is. So that's definitely something to remember and hold on to. Some of the things that didn't work so well, or that there's still questions for, is that obviously a big difficulty in doing theater work in refugee camps is the fact that that it's a refugee camp, and there are a lot of the time a lot more pressing physical needs than engaging in creative work. It's something that can only happen after the most like immediate needs are already taken care of, whether that's like physical danger that's still present or lack of water, food, housing. All these things are really present in these situations, and so that's a challenge that was run into a lot. The second thing was that there was another common theme was that just like a lack of proper training and an ongoing training, as well as like cultural sensitivity training for the other aid workers, especially expatriate workers who are not locals in the communities, and so don't have that cultural context. There's a lot of stigmatism and just like lack of understanding that really put up more barriers and caused more problems than it was solving. So it's something that Conquer Good in Thailand also realized through his practice, and he was there for many, many years, that he needed to be preparing creative programs for the other aid workers just as much as he was for the Hmong people, to really foster that cross-cultural dialogue, to educate about each other, because when it's a one-way track, when it's you need to learn something, it's not. I mean, it's completely disrespectful for one thing, but it's also it's just not a productive way to accomplish anything. So I think I'm just about at time. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry I wasn't able to go more into detail. Very fascinating. I wish I could talk more about the project in Thailand. I didn't even get to talk about this in my paper too much, but it was very like bread and puppet kind of style, celebratory like parades, and they used a lot of like traditional. Because he had so many relationships with the people, he was able to insert a lot of traditional performance aspects into the parade and stuff. I'm sorry I'm going over time, but I really want to talk about this. And so you had this big like puppet figure called Mother Clean, who is the main character in all these songs, and then other traditional like animal characters from Hmong culture, like the tiger, who is like the trickster character. And they would put in a lot of different like parables and folk practices of all kinds of things that would really engage everyone and get them interested enough to listen to the fairly simple messages ultimately that were being communicated. And he actually found a lot of success in that. So, okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to hearing all of your presentations as well. Take care, everybody. Love you.